Sabendo que APIs tornaram-se importantes e populares nos últimos anos, chamamos uma expert no assunto para entender o que são e como funcionam essas interfaces. É Tessa Mero, evangelista na Cisco. No seu tempo livre, gosta de jogar videogame, praticar snowboard e comer comida coreana.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. Whew. My name is Tessa Mero. First, I want to give a huge thank you to the conference organizers here for putting together this amazing event. So, a round of applause for them. And also thank you to the Brazilian JavaScript community here for being so welcoming and amazing. And also you can tweet at me during the session at Tessa Mero, Tessamero. So the act of consuming a REST API means to eat it all up. So in context, it means to eat it, swallow it, and digest it, leaving any others in the pile exposed. So it basically just means to use an API. Here is an overview of what I will be going through. Who am I? What are APIs, requests and responses, intro to APIs, playing with Spark API, playing with Tropo API, and taking the knowledge home with you. I'll try to speak a little more slower for the translator. I'm getting a little too excited. I am a developer advocate for Cisco DevNet. DevNet is the developer department for Cisco. I've recently started this job earlier this year, and I absolutely love it. Developer advocates reach out to developers and bring awareness to our products, such as our APIs. That's why I'm always talking about APIs. My previous job was teaching web application development in college, at a college, including JavaScript and PHP courses. I also have a degree in web development as well. I'm always a teacher at heart, so I've always made myself available to mentor developers and help them become successful. I am obsessed with free and open source communities. I've been speaking at Joomla and PHP events for many, many, many years. I also run several developer meetups in Seattle, which is in the United States. And I also run an annual conference for the PHP community, and hoping one day to run an annual JavaScript conference also, because I absolutely love it. I love you all. I have 2 children. I have a son named Jaden, who is 7, and I have a daughter who is 5. They drive me crazy, but I love them, and everything I do is for them. Why are APIs so important? Most companies today have several different softwares they need to use, including sales, accounting, CRM, a project management system, and etc. To have the software all work together is becoming a more important thing for both synergy and financial reasons, and is making tasks much easier for work processes. They can also create their own tool to enhance their software, making their customers happier. I spent a very long time on this chart, since I'm not allowed to use other people's charts. As you can see, the amount of APIs out there started with one API in the year 2000, which was eBay, of course, and has exponentially increased over time. In 2016, there has been more than 50 million API requests made and 30,000 available APIs out there. From 2015 to 2016, it has doubled in growth from 15,000 to 30,000 and only increasing by double every year. Okay, so what is an API? I'm sure there's a lot of you that are already aware of it or have used it before, but there's still some new developers out there that are just getting started with it. Ready for a lot of examples? I'll make it sound easy. An API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a way for two pieces of software to talk to each other. Which brings me to saying that the API is the user interface for software systems. APIs are sets of requirements that govern how one application can talk to another. An API is best thought of as a contract provided by one piece of computer software to another. I will use Yelp as an example. I'm not sure if that's something that's used commonly here in Brazil. Yelp displays nearby restaurants using the Google Map API by exposing some of the program's internal functions to the outside world with limited fashion. This makes it possible for applications to share data without requiring developers to share all of their code. APIs simplify all of that by limiting outside program access to a specific set of features by allowing them to request data. Think of it as doors or windows or even levers. APIs make it possible to mix and match a set of APIs such as Google, Facebook API, Twitter API, and make an entire new app or service. The widespread of APIs for major services is what made the modern web experience possible today. APIs are often referred to as an engine of innovation. Because of an API, there are so many cool applications out there that wouldn't exist now. REST API versus Web API. If you've heard the two terms before, REST describes a way of interacting with an HTTP server, not what the server should return in response. HTTP implements methods, which is also known as verbs, other than get or post. It also implements head, which is without the response body, and put and delete, which I'll go over a little later. A REST interface simply makes uses of these additional verbs to convey the meaning of the requests to the server. Next, we will go over web pages, requests, responses, and REST APIs. When you view a web page, it sends a request to the web server and sends a response back. So you are making a request and getting a response. As simple as that. When you send your HTTP request, you are sending a GET request. You get your response as an HTTP response code, where 200 means good and everything came back okay. This is exactly what is happening between your app and their app between an API. And see how two softwares are working together? Here are some common HTTP status codes that you'll get when you request a web page. When you make a request with an API, you also get a response back with a status code. Usually, you'll always be hoping for 200 OK. There's a list of a ton of status codes, so you'll have to look it up. There's some good ones out there too. Using Cisco Spark API is a use case, of course. To understand a specific API, you must know what the application actually does. Cisco Spark is a collaboration tool like Slack, Glip, kind of like Skype, and it allows you to chat, have video meetings, make phone calls, and have group discussions. Spark is designed to be a very lightweight tool, so developers can easily customize it and add the features that they need to it. So how do you interact with this particular API? Well, there are methods you can make to request data. And once you understand how to work with one API, the rest is easy. When you are getting a data via an API, you make your request. In this flowchart, you see that your app is asking to make a list of Spark rooms. Then the Spark server prepares the data and sends a list of Spark rooms back. And you can have it parsed in any parsing format you want, such as JSON or XML, which are the two most popular. Don't ask which is better to use, since they both have their pros and cons. It really depends on what you are doing in your application. So you get your application. So your application would be the API consumer. The request is get rooms, and the Cisco Spark API is the API provider. Then the return result is an HTTP 200 OK. This is a list of different HTTP routing methods you can use to make a request. There's get. You can get a list of rooms or get an individual item ID. There's post, which creates a new item. There's put, which updates an item. And then there's delete, which deletes the item. That one's the easy one to remember. So how do you test these API calls? There's a plugin or application called Postman. Postman comes in handy. Does anyone here use Postman? Yeah. Woo! Look at that. Good. I'm hooked on it. I'll show you how to work with REST API calls. First, you'd have to install the Chrome plugin Postman, or you can install it as an individual app on the Mac, and it's free to use. It's a free tool to forge API requests and examine responses. For Mozilla or Safari, you can install a plugin called REST Client. Let's understand how Postman is working with the GitHub API here. You create an HTTP request to github.com, leave the get method as is, enter the URL of the resource, and then you press the send button. Postman issues the HTTP call on your behalf and shows the response by the GitHub API. Here it shows the response is 200 OK towards the bottom right. The HTML page contents are placed in the body. Now what? How do you figure out how to use an API? A great API will have great documentation. If people cannot figure out how to use your API, then you will not have as many users as you were hoping for. The most popular APIs out there will have very well-written documentation. You can have the best API in the world, but if developers can't figure out how to use it, they will find something else to use. Reviewing the documentation. To start learning a new API, first find the documentation page, of course. You find the API reference and figure out what you want to do. Then you test your API requests via Postman, because it's fun, of course. I want to first create a room in Spark and test it through Postman. How do we start with that? I open up the documentation for the API reference. It says for rooms, you can list rooms, create rooms, get room details, update a room, and delete a room. In this example, I created a title called PHP Cruise Room for my Spark room, which is a chat room. I knew to use this title because of the API documentation. After clicking on Submit, I opened up my Spark platform. There is now a new room that was added to the top that I created with an API call in Postman. So you created a room. Now how do you post a message to it through an API request? How does it know where to find that room? To create a message API request, you will need to take note of the key generated for the room you created, which is your room ID. Refer to the documentation for creating a message. Test the API request, and then the magic happens. So what do we do next? Oh, right, we go back to the documentation to find out what HTTP request to make to create a message. Looks like it's the second one here, so we will use the method post. But what about request parameters? Oh, right, the documentation stuff again. This is a list of parameters you can use for the messages in particular. Let's use room ID and text as an easy example to demonstrate. The text is the message for the room. The room ID is what generated after you created a room. Add the JSON data of the room ID and text to the body. The text is the message that you want. You click send, and now it posts a message to your room. Go ahead and try it when you get home. It's very easy to do. There's one important thing you need to do when you receive a 200 OK HTTP status. Please take note of this. You do a dance. That's how excited I get at home. Does that dance translate into your language at all? Now I'm feeling bouncy. All right, I get it now. Now show me something else that's cool. So I absolutely love talking about APIs, and there's two different APIs at Cisco that I talk about all the time because I love to educate developers and show them new things. Another really cool one that we have is a voice and SMS API. You can build applications and tools that interact with your cell phone by making a call or a text message. It's very cool stuff, and you can find it at tropo.com. And it's free to use for developers, of course. This is my favorite one to show people because developers seem very excited, and this can help improve their software. That's what I look like all the time, playing with demo applications. Just looks like I'm just playing on my phone. To create an application, you register, it's free. You click on My Apps, and you create a new app. It's probably one of the easiest APIs to get started with. You can literally spend 5 minutes to create a working application. First, you would give your app a name. Leave it at default for development for the app status. Edit your script and create a name, such as textservice.js. You can select a country, such as Brazil, and select which region in the country and click Add. Each time you create an application, it gets a phone number added to it. Here would be the JavaScript that you would write to send a text message. It's that simple. To allow SMS to work on your application, you would need to put in a support ticket or contact me to get it activated. You can also launch your apps by using a token URL in the browser to make a request and fire off your application. You simply add a question mark after the method call and before putting in the query parameters. Each query parameter is separated by an and sign or ampersand sign. I changed some of the numbers in there in case you guys try to hack me while I'm up here. Magic, I know, right? So that's what it looks like right when you fire off the API request. You get a text message. Only a few minutes to do, it's fun. And you can do it too. You may experience this with most APIs with great documentation that it's easy to get started with. And to figure out how to code in a new API, look for the documentation with the list of functions and code that you can use. Whereas with this, it's call, answer, log info, say, ask, and record. It's very easy. I know. So one really cool thing that I've learned recently about Cisco is we just got a Spark Innovation Fund that was given to my department. It's for the benefit of the developers out there to get their startup or any kind of idea that they have fully funded by our company. We want to market our APIs and drive our developer ecosystem. And this really benefits you, and your name and company is on the application or idea. Our budget that we were given is 150 million USD, which is equivalent to 485 million Brazilian real. Not very much, I know. It's just pennies to Cisco. You can also find the information about the fund here. We're literally just handing it out to people with ideas. That's how excited we are to get developers using our APIs. And don't forget to tweet at me at Tessa Mero. So, I hope you are feeling highly consumed and full from this API talk. If you are new to APIs or a developer just getting started, or if you need a mentor to help you in the developer community, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm always available to help others. Thank you.